Handouts of what we're going to talk about today. When we talked to you last time, we discussed the fact that I was going to try to provide you all of the elements of writing your own marketing plan, which is essentially what the handout you have in front of you. For the next 40 minutes, though, as we talk, if you look at the front of the handout, there are the steps of building a plan, actually research, planning, etc., which are some of the things we covered last time, your SWOT analysis, your code analysis, etc. On the back of the handout are more on the execution side of things, types of advertising and how they coordinate and collaborate, etc. Show of hands for all of you in the room, would you rather spend a majority, not all the time, but a majority of the time talking about the steps in the planning phase and how those things work, or would you rather spend a majority of the time in the execution side talking about what you know about your business and your competition and trying to actually execute kind of real world style? So raise your hand if you would prefer to spend more time in the planning process today. No one. So I'm assuming everyone would like to spend the majority of our time in the execution side, is that correct? Fantastic, we totally can do that. What's funny is because I'm a planner, like I do strategic planning for a living, I could talk to you for 4 hours about just SWOT and competitive analysis, but we won't do that because that's not what you guys need today, okay? So instead what I'll do is I'll fly through the front page. I'm going to reference back to some of the things we talked about last time, make sure that keep our memory jogged, step through the phases of planning, strategic plan, and then jump right into the back of the page, and we will have more and more discussion about actual execution, okay? Cool? All right, here we go. So last time I gave you guys some definitions. We had the dictionary definition, we had the AMA definition of marketing. My definition is much better than theirs, so I'm going to remind you what my definition of marketing is. Marketing is the research, positioning, branding, strategy, and then, after advertising execution, measurement. This is the process of marketing. Too many people, in general, not just in this room, confuse and combine marketing and advertising, and they are two different elements. So the marketing aspect we'll talk about first here, and then when we get into that actual execution side of things, the majority of that is advertising, tactics, and execution. The reason that they are separate but they collaborate together is we inform ourselves with marketing, we understand what we're trying to do with the marketing process. We execute via advertising. Where the failure is people go straight to advertising. Put my name and logo out there, just out there anywhere, I don't care. That's a failure of marketing and your advertising being effective. Then we go back to marketing because we have to measure your advertising effectiveness and go back to the beginning and start the whole thing over again. So the two work in concert with each other. It's really easy to confuse sort of where one ends and where one begins. Kind of like Bethany, Waracres, Oklahoma City. It's like, where am I at now, depending on what block I'm on, right? But they're all essential to each other, and so it's a vicious cycle if you're doing it poorly, and it's a cycle of success if you do it well. Marketing and advertising bolster and support the sales process. And so what we'll finish with today is effective advertising based on solid marketing and a well-developed brand is going to put you in front of your most potential audience so that when they walk in the door, they pick up the phone, they click it for an email, and they get connected to your sales team, that we've already reshaped that sales funnel a little bit that we talked about last time. Our 100 people that we're going to talk to per month are a little bit more pre-qualified and already have an idea of why we're in a sales conversation as opposed to cold calling mass marketing. Good? Okay, so the thing about marketing that you need to remember is you have to do research. You have to base everything in marketing on data, market data. The real world will tell you where to go and where to find success. If you base your marketing solely, now there's a little bit of gut in there too, trust me. There's a little bit of a self-analysis and gut reaction to things. If you base everything on your gut or on your ego, then your marketing is set up to fail, which will make your advertising fail, which will now make your sales cycle nearly impossible. So do your research. It can be boring to do research, but the power of research is worth wading through all kinds of information. So what am I talking about research, right? Well, the first thing obviously you need to understand is yourself and your business, but you also need to understand what your competition is doing. The great thing is your competition will tell you what they are doing. So a good amount of marketing research is based on competitive analysis or finding out what the strengths and weaknesses of your competitors, both primary and secondary, are, because they're going to tell you in their marketing. If your primary competitor only talks about price, or only talks about hours, or location, or how big of a company they are, or how technologically advanced their machines are, that's their strength. And it's something that if you don't have that same strength that you can actually compete with, you need to market around. So understanding who you're competing with and how they're competing with you is one of the first steps of marketing research. Understanding what your competition is doing versus what your strengths and weaknesses are is positioning. We'll go a little bit in detail on positioning in just a minute, because I think it's one of the most important things any business owner can know about any part of their business is positioning themselves against the market. So positioning is, without positioning, just doing advertising just because. Let's tell everyone we have the best price in town. We have nothing based on that. We have not done any research. Put you in the wrong position. Failure to position yourself correctly is the fastest way for your business to fail, as far as marketing and communication goes. When you know who you are and what your offering is, you know what your competition is doing, and you've positioned yourself correctly, the other part of research is the whole market as a whole. You have to know what's available in your market and what's potential and possible. If you can only sell $1 million worth of flowers, since I just saw flour on the table, in Oklahoma City in a year, that's your market scope. If you understand that your market scope is $1 million a year, and you are one of 20 players in that market, you're not going to spend $500,000 a year on marketing, because the market scope won't provide back ROI. But you don't know that until you do the research. Chambers of commerce are awesome places to go for research on how much economic impact happens with each type of industry. Your local chamber will know that, your city and state chamber will know that, and Google will know this. So there's no excuse to say, I didn't know how to figure out what the market scope was. If you really want to become detailed and specific in your marketing, you will go from marketing scope to market share. What market share is your piece of the pie. If you know that every year in the state of Oklahoma, $1 million worth of floral is sold, and you know that your business did $100,000 in sales in floral, then you know you have 10% market share. The reason to know this is, as you move your marketing and advertising forward, as you try to expand your business via sales, you have to it's not just making more money each year, it's increasing market share per year. Because the overall market can expand, prices can go up, etc. So just because X number of dollars came through your top line in 2017 versus 2016, doesn't mean that you gained in the market or increased your market share or are actually growing your business. You just have a different economic model because prices change, because market factors change. So knowing your market scope and your market share is highly valuable for you when we get into the adjustment and measurement phase to figure out if our marketing, advertising, and sales tactics are actually being effective. So, the other things you need to know about marketing, as it's different than advertising. Marketing is the work before the work. You always start with marketing and then you go to advertising. If you go straight to advertising and you've done it wrong, please go back to go, but do not collect $200. Marketing is a two-way conversation. Advertising is a one-way conversation. Marketing is designed for you to read into what you've done and how to measure it, and you set these measurement goals before you start execution. Along the way of an advertising campaign, you measure, reference back to the goals and the information you set beforehand, i.e. what you want to accomplish. You set that beforehand, not during, because then you're making it up as you go. But when things work well, it's very obvious to say, those are the things working, let's do more of that. The things that are failing or not working as well as your top performing things, let's say your Facebook ads are killing it, but your direct mail or your trade show attendance is not creating the sales at the level that your Facebook ads are. You don't automatically stop doing direct mail and trade show appearances, but you have to figure out why they're not working and make an adjustment. At some point, you may get to, it's never going to work, and so we should stop doing it, right? At the end of the day, marketing two-way conversation of taking feedback back into internally and adjusting your marketing tactics that become your advertising execution allows you to spend the least amount of money for the biggest impact. All of that has to be done before you start advertising, or you're guessing as to what's being effective. So, it's the work before the work, it's a two-way conversation. And finally, the last idea about marketing before we start talking about tactics and advertising is marketing plans are made to be adjusted. There's no such thing as this will work 100% of the time marketing plan. And when people try to sell you marketing and advertising that works right every time, is guaranteed, is no fail, or you'll be on the front page of Google tomorrow, that's snake oil. Please don't fall for that stuff. There's no guarantees in these things. It's a process. But a marketing plan is written to things are going to work well, so other things are not going to work as well, and so you have to make those adjustments along the way. That's how the real world works. If someone guarantees you they're going to get you sales and never going to spend a dime that doesn't make you a quarter, they're just telling you that to get your dime. Don't give it to them. So the other two elements here that we want to discuss as far as terms before I jump into the rest of this is marketing is marketing. Advertising is completely different than marketing. Advertising is the execution of tactics based on your marketing plan. Advertising is a one-way conversation, standing on a street corner and yelling at people. Advertising simply is executing a message, hopefully, to your best audience. Advertising in and of itself doesn't measure and doesn't know if it's being effective. That's why marketing is so important. Having those marketing measurements built in is so important, because placing an ad in a publication, placing an ad on social media, buying a sponsorship at an event, all types of advertising, which we'll get into detail in a few minutes, they aren't in and of themselves going to tell you what's working and not working. They just do their job and then they stop. It's a one-way conversation. So that's the difference between marketing and advertising. The third element in communication is PR, public relations. The difference between advertising and public relations is called earned media. It's not something that you specifically buy. So advertising is something that you specifically buy in place. If you buy an ad in a newspaper, you get to tell them what day you want, what size the ad is, and which section of the paper, sometimes what page you would like it on, depending on how much money you spend with it. PR is information you put into the world that creates opportunities for communication for you. You have less control of it, but you don't spend a specific amount of money on it. Sending out press releases, sending out news blurbs, doing things that are newsworthy will get you coverage, will get you mentions, will get you attention in media, whether it's print, broadcast, online, etc. You have no control as to who's going to pick the story up and run the story, or make the mention, or even how they're going to mention you in the context of a larger conversation. But you didn't pay them to, so you can't expect it, nor can you feel that it's a bad situation for you, because you're essentially getting free coverage. So PR is not a specific sales call. PR is conversation and communication about what your company is, what you do, who's interested in it, and how it can benefit them professionally or personally. Advertising can very specifically say, come here on Tuesday, buy a half-price hamburger, we'll give you this this prize, do this specifically. Call to action is advertising. We make great hamburgers that people like to come in and get, and a lot of people find our Half Price Tuesdays very popular, and we also do some donations back to some community groups. That's public relations. So, and again, it's not going to specifically sell Half Price hamburgers on Tuesday, but it gives an opportunity for people to understand through communication that you do that and that they might be interested in it. PR is also very good communication for your brand, idea, and concept, for community relations, for employee recruitment, and for stakeholder communication. And a stakeholder is anyone who might want to see your business succeed. Your clients are stakeholders. Your vendors that sell things to you are stakeholders. Your public officials could be stakeholders. Obviously, the public officials in this area want businesses to succeed. So they are a stakeholder of businesses in this physical area because they want them to do well, pay their taxes, employ people, etc. They aren't stakeholders in that they're thinking every day, how can I help this business grow? But if they are influenced positively by PR, whether it's online or in print or on TV, and they say to themselves, that business is doing well, we need to help them because it helps our general economy or things of that nature, that's positive reaction from the stakeholder from your PR. It helps with employee retention too, especially nowadays. The younger an potential employee is, the more that they want to work for a company that has social responsibility, that's involved in the local community. They want to work for a company that they feel proud to tell their friends that they work for. If you have positive PR happening on a regular basis for your company, where anyone who says, where are you working now, can go, oh, I heard great things about them, then the attracting and retaining younger millennial employees goes way up. All right, you guys ready to jump into what an actual steps of a marketing plan is? You guys good?
Yeah.
Okay, we're gonna fly through this so that we can get right into execution, okay? So the steps in plan, and I've alluded to them already, right? Research and analysis. You have to understand information about your product, your service, your business, and how it fits into your market scope. That self-analysis includes your SWOT analysis, we talked about last time, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, and a full breakdown of the features and benefits of your products or services. If you have these things written down, all of this discussion today, it only counts if it's written down. Having an idea in your head, or everyone knows we do that, is not planning. It's not real until it's written down. And it seems obvious, but until it's in a plan, written down, it's not real. So writing down the features and benefits of your product or service and how people utilize it, how people benefit from it, etc. It has to be written down and put together with your strengths and weaknesses in order to be one half of your positioning. The other half of your positioning is competitive analysis. We alluded to earlier during research. Who are your competitors? What are they doing? What strengths and weaknesses do they have? And what are the features and benefits of their product or service? So as you think you could figure out, if you take your strengths, weaknesses, features, and benefits on one side of the page, you put all of your competitors on the other side of the page, and you look at all of their strengths and weaknesses, the best thing that can happen for you is you find a place in that equation where your strength, or the thing that you do best, or the features that you have that maybe others don't have, can go to the other side of the page, and there isn't a direct match of someone who has that exact same combination. If there's no direct combination that's exactly the way you're going to present or position your business, that's the place you want to be. Because that's the place where people say, oh, I know 3 companies that do that. You're going to win that head-to-head battle because you were best positioned. So that's the key to positioning, is understanding who you are and what you're offering, understanding who your competitors are and what they're offering, and not trying to go in and knock their heads off, head-to-head. No one wants to go fight Mike Tyson straight up. But you know, if you could sneak up behind them and maybe have a weapon, you might have a chance, right? So you got to change the equation, change the fight. Don't try to go up against your competitors with their greatest strength in front of them. Go around them. That's positioning. The other thing you need to think about in your competitive analysis, it's very easy to understand who your primary competitors are. You also have secondary competitors, people who do things that are similar or things that people maybe substitute for your product or service. You also have to think about if you have essential products, insurance, medical, food, these are things people buy on a regular basis, is completely different than discretionary spending, art, entertainment, things that I don't have to have, but it's nice to have and I might spend my money on. If my product or service is based on discretionary income, I don't just have primary and secondary competitors. I'm competing against everything anyone might ever spend an extra dollar on. So if I have an art gallery and I'm trying to sell people art, I am competing with other art galleries. I'm competing with decorators and furniture stores, but I'm also competing against movie theaters, the Thunder, charity events, anything where Girl Scout cookies, where someone might pull that extra $5 out of their pocket and say, well, I'm going to get that today. I don't need it, but I'd like to have it. So there's a difference if you have an essential product or service versus discretionary income products or services. The next step is your audience. You must know who your audience is. The failure here is too many people stop at a very basic idea of what an audience is. Men over 50. How much did that narrow things down? Well, only halfway. Maybe, men over 50 who play golf, who make over $100,000 a year, who are college educated, who subscribe to one or more golf publications, and also own a vehicle less than 5 years old. That is a very different picture of who you're marketing and advertising to. That's the kind of person that you now know, if I'm selling car insurance, I'm going to have vehicle in the ad that's less than 5 years old, and it might be parked on a golf course. Because it's going to motivate my individual, as opposed to a blank wall with a guy buy car insurance. So understanding who you are, your position, your competition, and your best, most potential, most specific audience. So it's not guys over 50, it's guys over 50 who do these other things and have these other factors. Why is it important to know that much detail about them? Because it tells you their behavior. It also allows you to drive straight in and connect with the person in the best connection possible. Especially if it's something like buying insurance. They don't necessarily get up in the morning and go, I'm going to buy insurance, it's great. But they need to. And they want to make a connection and have a business relationship with someone who could sell them insurance, who they feel like understands it. Now, where people make a mistake is, but wait, there are women and there are men under 50, and there are people who don't like golf and all these other things. This is true. But if your primary audience, the person who's most likely to pay for your product or service, is that guy, you detail your advertising based on style, presentation, etc., to that individual. And then if other people also find it attractive, informative, or interesting, that's a bonus. The worst thing you can do is design your advertising to be to everyone, because then it's for no one. If you are so vague that it doesn't exclude anyone, it doesn't include anyone. So don't make the mistake of thinking your audience is everyone. If you think your audience is everyone, we need to talk. Okay, it's not. Everyone is not your client. You need to drill down as far as possible into your best potential client, the person who most likely walks in your door and makes a sale. That person, what they look like, how they think, what got them to you. Was it an ad, a billboard, a piece of direct mail, a Facebook ad, your name on an event? What got them in the door to you? All that information lets you know how to create your advertising campaign the next time, or the most likely person to come in contact with your sales staff, and you've already helped your sales team be an advantage, as opposed to them trying to spend half an hour getting over the objections of someone who should have never been in the building in the first place. So audience is a huge, huge, huge aspect of your marketing. The further down you can drill into what your audience looks like, what motivates them, further than just basic demographics. And again, there are services you can buy that will tell you if your target is a 50-year-old white male, this is what very likely motivates them versus a 22-year-old Latina female versus a 75-year-old African-American woman. There are cultural norms and other things that allow us to understand who these people are. You can buy these things. You can find research online. Again, Google is your friend. Universities will tell you a lot of this information. There are a lot of places to find ways to understand the behavior of certain groups and types of people. So make sure that's part of your audience identification in your marketing plan. All right, we're going to skip right through a lot of this stuff now and get right into execution. You guys ready? So you have positioning. You understand who your audience is. The last piece of marketing is differentiation. Because we're competing from a position of strength for us and not strength for our competition, we have to set ourselves apart from our competition. It's not about being better, it's about being different. People do not activate on every advertising says we're better, you want to do business with us. Your advertising needs to say, we are different and here's how, and if that's interesting to you, we'd like to do business with you. That goes back to pre-qualifying the individuals who come in the front door, make a phone call, etc., and come in contact with your sales team. So positioning, differentiation is the main thing that you need to take out of your marketing plan. Now let's get into advertising execution. We know who we're targeting. We know who we are and what our position is. We know what our differentiation message is. All of this informs our creative execution via advertising. So there are 3 basic types of advertising. There is traditional, which is essentially everything we did before the internet. Then there is digital, which is anything that's delivered via the internet. And then there is essentially what every client I've ever had does, and I'm sure what all of you are doing, which is a hybrid of the two. Taking advantage of traditional advertising, such as publications, direct mail, billboards, events, etc., radio and television, if you can afford it, and backing that up with websites, social media, email campaigns, possibly even mobile messaging, etc., and creating a hybrid of items that convey your brand and your direct specific sales messages to your audiences. Now where it gets crazy is, as you can see on the list I gave you, there's really hundreds of options to advertise, right? So where do you figure out your best avenue and your best medium and channel to advertise? And I'm actually asking the question. I want you guys to tell me, where are places you advertise and what made you think that was the way to go? Anyone? Okay.
Well, I use a lot of social media because in my bridal business, that's where I look at the client and what they're going to be looking at.
Excellent.
That's the best way to reach out to those people.
Right. So you pay attention, you do social listening, where you're seeing where people are posting about getting married, having bridal parties, having events, etc.
Right.
And then are you connected with them? Are you following them and liking their posts, or are you actually actively DMing them and making direct connections with them?
More direct connection.
Good. Too many people often just follow and like and say, oh, we, maybe comment on a post. We do that.
Yeah.
You gotta have that follow through, right?
Yeah.
But you pre-qualified your audience based on keywords and types of posting that you're doing.
Right.
Very good. Anyone else want to share examples of your advertising, how you decided to do it? How does Sandler decide what types of advertising they do? Just pick one.
It's a good question. Biggest thing for us is that who we advertise to is a very small portion. So really it's more of a draw. So it's LinkedIn and it's social media, it's PR types of pieces, it's being in the newspaper where somebody's writing about something or quoting us in an article, those types of things. So we spend our time developing relationships for PR for the most part.
LinkedIn is the perfect platform for Sandler training. That's where business people are. They're expecting business communication. They're coming to read the feeds to learn about their business and improve their business. So it makes perfect sense for Sandler training because they work with business owners and business decision makers, right?
Yep.
So where a lot of confusion happens and a lot of people I talk to just out on the streets on a regular basis is, if I spend X dollars here, I can't spend X dollars over here, right? I only have so much money. I don't know where to spend it. I don't know where to start. I'm afraid if I do something wrong, it's going to set me back. So let me try to answer a few of those questions and kind of dispel some of those myths, okay? So number one, outside of saying things offensive, being on social media and doing direct advertising, whether it's traditional or digital, there's no real way to do it wrong other than not doing it or doing it in such an egocentric way it becomes offensive. And being offensive to people can not just be saying specific words or phrases that we all know you should never say in public. It can sometimes be presenting yourselves as bigger or different than you are, or making claims that we all know. Trust me, every time I get an email every day that says, we guarantee the first page of Google, I'm completely turned off, I mark them as spam, I want them to go away. I know that claim is not valid, right? So these are some of the ways that you can advertise wrong, and it's not just you spent money that's never coming back to you, but you're actually turning people off to your product or service. The worst thing you can do is do nothing at all. Because of the overstimulation of all of our target audiences, you can't send them one thing one time and expect that to stick in their brain, because 10 seconds later they get getting bombarded with social media, with website, with things they're reading, they're hearing the radio, they're listening to music streaming, etc. So repetition and consistency is the key to advertising. With a very basic direct message, which is we developed in our marketing process aimed at your best audience. The execution channels, again, should be based on who your audience is. And once again, Google is your friend. There are tons and tons of articles that you can look up online that will tell you who is on each of the social media channels, who pays attention to direct mail the best, who is affected by direct sales, etc. That you could find ways to find your audience within those bits of information. So a lot of people ask me all the time, should I be using Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, or Snapchat? All of them. Or none of them. It depends on who you are, your position, and what your audience is. But I guarantee you right now, if one of you pulled out a phone or a tablet and Googled what social media platform is best for catering, there's 100 articles. So there's ways for you to figure out which audience, where your audience is and where they live and how they want to be communicated. So don't let this huge list of advertising opportunities and mediums confuse you or intimidate you. Let it, use it to investigate each one and see if it stacks up against who your audience is and if they relate and pay attention to that type of marketing or advertising. Because we said earlier, our marketing plan is meant to be adapted. We're going to have measurements here as we wrap up at the end of the conversation. The things that work, if you have measurements in place, you'll know, and you'll do more of them. And the things that don't, you'll understand are not working, and you'll do less of them. The step in between those are, of the top 50% of your advertising that's working, you're going to keep doing. The bottom 50% of your advertising, you want to either adjust or stop doing it all. You have to make those adjustments by building in what's called A/B testing. Every time you run a campaign on any medium, digital or traditional, you should be running A and B versions of that campaign. So an example would be, version A is a very direct sale. Come in Wednesday, buy half-price pizzas. Ask for Becky, and she'll give you the special discount. A very specific sales pitch. The B of that is, we really sell great meatloaf and great sandwiches, and Wednesdays are specials, And if you come in next week and ask Becky, she'll give you this discount. Different. Ask in a different discount. If a month later, 50 people have come in and asked Becky for I want this, I want the half price thing, and I want it now and then today because it's only good on Wednesday, and 10 people only came in and asked for the B offer, or 2 people or none, it's very obvious A or B worked. You start A and B comparisons very broad like that, and you can continue to break those down. So now A worked and B sucked. So we're not going back to the B route. But A still can be broken down into 2 or 3 versions. You want to keep breaking down those versions, keep putting those messages out, and then measuring which one puts the most people through the door on the phone clicking on your website. Ultimately, you'll find a combination that's the most effective. Or you'll find no combinations that work and you shouldn't be taking that path at all. So it's not enough to come up with a really good advertising campaign and run it once or run a single version of it. Because it doesn't tell you anything, it doesn't create the two-way conversation we talked about earlier in marketing. Your advertising needs to consider a two-way conversation by doing A/B testing. So, once you get there, that gets you to a space where you can measure and analyze. So we're going now back into marketing. We set our measurements before we begin an advertising campaign. I need X number of phone calls. I need X number of people to show up in the door. I need to increase sales by 7%. It has to be something that is specific and measurable. Increasing sales is not specific, and it's really not measurable. Increasing sales by 7% in 30 days is very specific, very measurable. So, the elements we use when doing measurements, we do 2 things. We have what's called a KPI and ROI. The KPI is a key performance indicator. They are specific, but not so specific that you can't glean information out of them that is outside I needed X number of sales to happen on this date or this time. Every campaign should have KPIs, and they should be sales, it's phone calls, it's clicks on the websites, it's anything that an action that came out of advertising that was positive, whether it ended in a completed sale or not. That's a KPI, or a key performance indicator. You also need to consider if your KPIs are something that needs to be happening immediately. St. Patrick's Day sale better happen this week. If it's something in the short term, this month, this quarter, the springtime, or if it's something that happens over a long-term period, and again, this depends on how your business is and the length of your sales cycle. It takes a whole lot longer to sell a Mercedes-Benz than it does a hot dog, right? So the product service, your sales cycle, can be measured along the way. It's not always X number of sales or X number of dollars. There are other things that let you know your advertising is gaining attention and bringing people towards your sales process, even if it doesn't get them completely in the door, because it lets you know in general you're doing a good job and you need to be doing more of the things that are making those things happen. And ultimately, every piece of advertising is an awareness of your brand. And so there are plenty of times that you do things simply for the awareness, the establishment, the gravitas, if you will, of your brand. You want people to understand your brand isn't the half-price hamburgers. Your brand isn't the St. Patrick's Day sale. Your brand is the restaurant that provides that. And so you have to do marketing and advertising that establishes your brand, what it is, and that it is an established brand that is trustworthy, that you should do business with because they're not going anywhere, and they're not someone who's going to rip you off because that brand doesn't have a negative reputation online, social media, on review sites, etc. So you need specific advertising, buy half-price hamburgers. You need general advertising. We make great things that happen in the spring. And you need brand advertising. We're a good company that does things in the community. So From that, your next piece of measurement is ROI, return on investment. We talked about market scope earlier. You don't want to spend more money than you can return in ROI if your market scope won't support it. You should see positive returns on every dollar you're spending in marketing. So if you spend $1, you would like to make $10 in sales. Not every business has a 10-to-1 ratio. Some businesses have 2-to-1 ratios. Some have 500-to-1 ratios. You have to establish your ROI, your return on investment ratio for yourself. But it always has to be positive for direct advertising with a little bit of brand advertising thrown in there, because brand advertising and establishment advertising has no ROI to it, because no one ever comes in and says, I saw the billboard with just your name on it, and out of the whim, I'm going to come in and buy stuff. But you have to have it. So your very specific ask, your call to action, half-price burgers or the St. Patrick's Day special, you can measure that specific ROI. But your overall advertising campaign has to have some things that are neutral or negative ROIs, because you have to have brand awareness. So you want to keep ROI in front of you, because you don't want to spend so much money you can never make it back, because that's not profitable for business. That puts us upside down. But you can't get so caught up in ROI that every day you're looking at the sales numbers versus what you paid that month and trying to figure out, I'm upside down today. You can't get that caught up in the minutia, because it doesn't work out that way. So be aware of your ROI. Don't panic about ROI. If you're doing your A/B testing and you've set up your marketing in order to be adjustable along the way, even when you're failing, you're learning things that will make your marketing better, your advertising better. And so you need to keep doing it, just making those adjustments that your audience is telling you by reacting positively or negatively to what you're putting out in the world. So the ultimate measurement is our analysis. We talked about ROI, we've set goals, and then there are very measurable statistics. Things like your sales numbers, your market share, which is what we talked about earlier, but also internally, profit margin, top line and bottom line sales. These are ways people often try to gauge if their business is being successful or not. It's different for every single business as to what model you have, but you need to have an understanding of, are you trying to sell more things at a lower margin? Do I need to sell 50,000 widgets at a 10% margin? Or do I need to sell 5,000 widgets at a 40% margin? Or am I selling 7 widgets at a 200% margin? If your widget is a high margin item, you don't have to mass market to big huge numbers because you make more per. The flip side is, if your widget is a low margin item, the food business is a good example. The margins are tight in food, your volume has to be up. These are ways to measure things. If I said 7 people bought from us this month, would that be a success or a failure? Depends on what your business is. Mm-hmm. Again, 7 hot dogs in a month, you're in trouble. 7 Mercedes-Benz, you're fine, right? So understand your margin and understand the difference between top line and bottom line sales. Top line sales is how much money comes in the door. Bottom line is how much money stays. And that is also typically based on your profit margin. Sometimes huge top line numbers look impressive. But if there's no money in the bank at the end of the month or at the end of the quarter, it doesn't mean anything. So don't get too caught up in your top line sales if your margins are wrong. And don't get caught up in your bottom line sales too much if your margins, again, are upside down. So make sure you're spending the right amount of money in the right way at the right time in order to get the right number of sales to happen depending on your business, your market, and the economic model that you have established. Don't let any single factor, margin, top line, bottom line, numbers per, etc., keep you from moving your business forward and always trying to make those adjustments that work better. Don't compare. They have 50,000 clicks a month on their website, and we only have 10,000. Sometimes that's not a bad thing. Because 10,000 clicks are people who are most likely to buy versus 50,000 clicks of people who accidentally found it doesn't mean anything. 10 people walking in the door ready to buy is a whole lot better than 100 people walking in the door and didn't even know what you do, right? So you have to measure and analyze all your marketing and advertising in order to go back to the top, start over again, make those adjustments, and do it all again. Marketing is never complete, it never ends, and it never has a final success. It's always moving. Now you, in theory, can get to a place where you've A/B tested everything, you've tested all your channels, you've identified your audience down to the T, and it's super highly successful. That's the goal. There'll still be elements of that won't work, and it's fine, as long as they're minor elements, and then something will change. People who were killing it 15 years ago with direct mail, 20 years before that were killing it with Yellow Pages ads, and 30 years before that were killing it with billboards. And then today, if they're doing those things, they're getting killed. So, but if you are paying attention to your marketing process and the advertising execution, that two-way conversation, when a new type of communication shows up, when technology happens, when mobile devices become more important than TVs and radios in our homes, you can adjust and adapt because you understand your audience, you understand your offering, and you understand how to test your marketing. So don't get so caught up in the actual channels and the execution minutia, but in the theories that got you success to begin with, and always paying attention to what works and what doesn't work. And the things that don't work are not failures, they're simply ways for you to better understand your audience. That is the marketing, advertising relationship. Vicious cycle when it's bad, and cycle of success when it's good. And that takes us to Q&A.
My big question is the one that, always escapes me. And sometimes, honestly, I just come up with that as the fallback for not putting the work into a slot, putting the plan together, which is looked at and broken out. The majority of my business comes from referrals, from word of mouth. And sometimes I use that as a crutch to not bother to do some of this, because what's the point? But that's kind of the crux of it, Kyle,
Right.
is if you're in a business where it is word of mouth, how does marketing help you?
Really simple. If I stood here right now and told all of you, I'm going to refer this IT service, I'm going to refer this caterer to you, that's a huge part of the sales process, right? I'll tell you, I'm a graduate of Sandler. I will refer that you go and take their course. You know the first thing you're all going to do? Google, tell me about Sandler training. If you don't have an online presence, if you don't have social media accounts, if you don't have positive reviews online, if I can't find your office because you don't have all of these things, if I hear that referral but I've never heard of you, someone who says I don't know who the heck Sandler Training is, as opposed to I've seen their billboards, I've seen their name on things, I know someone else who's been, etc. I've driven by their office, I see the sign on Northwest Expressway. All of that goes into, because the human brain wants to fight the referral, just go spend money. The dance, right? The human brain wants to do a dance of, well, I don't need to spend the money on that or this or that, even though I got someone directly said, I use them, you should too. So I'm going to go look them up. I'm going to do online. I'm going to find other ways for my brain to say, they're a legit company. I do need to do business with them. So referrals don't happen magically. The other thing is a marketing and advertising tactic is getting referrals. It's offering finder fees. It's giving bonuses. It's writing thank you notes when you do get the referral. That's all advertising and marketing. That action, sending thank you notes for referrals, giving a 10% discount on your next purchase, giving a cash bonus for a referral, that's in your marketing plan. Because for you, when you say, do I spend $500 on a newspaper ad, or do I put $500 in my referral pool that I can give $100 gift cards for referrals, if those 5 referrals will get you $50,000 in referral business and a $500 newspaper ad gets you nothing, your extra $500 is going in a referral pool. So that's, if you think of your referrals and how you push the process as marketing, it makes sense.
I'm writing it down.
Good.
So Kyle, it really still is a layered approach.
Absolutely.
I mean, it's always been a layered approach. Now we just have a lot more options for the layers. Used to we had 2 or 3 layers. Now we have a dozen of them, and then you throw these millennials that I birthed.
Right.
Or my wife did, actually. I didn't participate in that part. You throw that into the mix. That's where my struggle comes in, is all the social media,
Right.
in that part, and they of course do the social media, for me. My daughters that work for me do the social media, because it's like, Dad, you can't like our own post from our page. I'm like, well, how do I know that I'm liking our own post? Read the button. Okay, I just quit totally. I very rarely like anything anymore of anybody. And unfortunately, because I get dinged in the middle of the night by somebody that I liked something,
Yeah.
and that kind of deal. So it still is a layered approach. Example that I was thinking about was the billboard on the expressway, but my brand is very limited. So I thought a better plan would be to do a direct mail to that area first, then advertise on the billboard. That way they'll see the logo, the brand,
Right.
versus doing that first, because I know we're not going to get anything from the billboard itself, typically.
The billboard's a piece of the puzzle.
Right.
There's no single marketing or advertising tactic. There's no single thing that always works all the time. So it is a layered combination approach. So back when I was in college, in the 90s, they used to say it takes 7 touches or interactions with your brand message before someone understands what your brand does. You go, I don't know, what's Coke? The 7th time I hear a Coca-Cola advertisement of some sort, I go, oh, it's a drink. Now, for me, it's more like 40. I tell my clients 40 touches, interactions, before someone goes, oh, Sandler training, I get what they do now. So the billboard is one of those 40. The direct mail is one of those 40 the day that it shows up in the mailbox. But the reason still print works for some people is, but then they sit it down. They walk past it a 2nd time and a 3rd time and a 4th time. And even if the 5th time they throw it in the trash, it's the 5th time. The social media post are 2 more times, a Facebook ad shows up, etc. They drive by the billboard again, that's 8, 9, 10. That gets you further down that path to 40, because one thing won't give you 40. Right? The Super Bowl ad won't give you all 40. Because guess what? 30 seconds later, there's another ad that everyone's excited to see. I already forgot about the first Super Bowl ad. So you're right. There's no single answer. It's different for everyone, and it all solely depends on who your best target audience is. Who is most likely to call you up and say, I don't care what it costs, I'll buy it. That person, how they receive advertising is all that matters. And if there are millennial versus older generation, yeah, the digital stuff is way better, more effective. But if that person's 75, newspaper ad or direct mail piece might be more effective. But you can't ignore social media, because 75-year-olds on social media too. And they're going to go back to that research piece of, well, once I do get interested in you, I got to go look you up. Or if they ask someone who's a little bit younger, they go, well, let's see what they're tweeting about. So that's the combination, it is. But it always goes back to who's your audience, who's your best, most likely audience. That's who you want to go. You're going to know more about that. Everyone else doesn't matter.
Thank you.
And earlier, and I just didn't want to interrupt you, I guess, or I got nervous or something. You talk about whether, under research and analysis, whether it's a want versus a need. And I'm having a really hard time feeling if I'm a want or if I'm a need,
Okay.
because I'm kind of in the middle. So is there a want need?
Yes,
section?
yes, for sure. And typically want needs are, you could buy a chair, sit in, it's fine, but a really nice chair is more comfortable. So there's levels of need, and your want is based on how much you're willing to spend to not just have a basic need, but have something that's more valuable to you in your life. So pure want versus need. Want is a Rolex watch is a want. All right. Timex will tell you what time it is. This will tell you what time it is. A Rolex is a status piece, right? The only reason to buy a Rolex is for people to look at you and say, ooh, okay, right? So that's a pure want. Needs are simple. Food, electricity. If we own a business, we have to have insurance. We have to have ink pens. We have to have these things to keep our business open. And those are needs. Those are things you have to have in order to gasoline is a need. But it's easier to sell gasoline because at some point you're going to come to a gas station this week, right? You have the ones you like and ones you don't. And if you drive past a gas station you've never heard of, you know anything about, you might keep driving to the next one. So that's why they have to advertise to your need. But you're going to buy gas this week. You're going to buy probably office supplies this week if you own a business. You're going to buy food this week. You could skip buying a Rolex this week. So that's one and need. And there is a gray area in the middle, and that's typically an upgrade of your need.
What's difficult for us too, learning how to market our product, because it's not a tangible product, it's a software as a service. So any advice on how to do the research? It seems very cumbersome and overwhelming to research all these other time clock companies that may also offer all these other products. So do we compare ourselves to those Paycoms?
Yes.
Or the small people?
All of it.
All of it.
Somewhere in the middle, somewhere in that range of the smallest competitor out there through the most monster, somewhere in there is a position for you. Yes, it's a ton of work in an industry. Like niche industries are a little easier. An industry like that is a little harder. But everything else is based on that. Every dollar you spend, every minute you spend on advertising and marketing, every effort, training your sales team, everything in marketing, advertising, sales, execution through delivering to the client is based on what you can learn from that research. And so when you don't do it and you guess, or you base on your gut, or you base on ego, like people will love us, we're great, we're fine. You're spending time, money, effort on things that have no basis in reality. It might work, it might accidentally work. But are you gonna bet your money on accidental or thoughtful analysis of data? The data's out there. Everyone's data is out there. Who your competitors are, how they compete with you, how well they're doing. Some of it's harder to find than others, but it's out there in the world. The scope of your audience is out there. Guarantee you the chambers have that information. At the very least, they have basic, big numbers that you can get started from. And from that, there's some data, and there's some keywords and some other things you can research down. But yes, research is where everyone fails. Research is boring. No one wants to do it. It seems time consuming, it seems expensive, it seems overwhelming, and it seems like, but does it even exist, right? Well, you won't know until you go look. You got to put the effort in. You have to do the research, because everything that's not based on research and market information is guessing. None of us want to bet our business on guessing.
Kyle, do you guys have a couple questions I'm thinking about right now. For this one, do you have researching somebody's clients, the people that have bought from them? Is that part of that plan?
Absolutely. If you can find it. There's nothing better than when your competitors put their clients on their website.
How about your own clients? Your own clients, a lot of people I find out don't know, they think they know why people buy from them, but they don't know, because they've never asked what their buying motivations are, which sometimes can guide towards their marketing.
Right, and that goes into always thinking of marketing as a two-way conversation, trying to learn as much from your market and audience as possible. And a lot of it has to go into your sales process, which I'm sure you're going to cover next month. It isn't just a pure execution on sale. Walk in the door, I give you $1, you hand me the thing, walk out the door, right? That doesn't happen very often, you know. Convenience stores work like that, but B2B and service industry and SaaS, right, they don't work that way. I want to know what I'm getting for my money, and I may have to come back to it again, and we're creating business relationships. If your sales team is doing a great job of establishing business relationships, they will know what brought them in the door. No one ever walks in, I joke all the time with all my clients, no one ever walks in and goes, I saw your Facebook ad, I'm here, right? And then sure enough, when we launched the Manhattan downtown, the little bar for Bruce Reinhardt,
Yeah.
a guy walked in one day with he's like, I want that sandwich right there. It's happened one time. One time in 20 years of marketing, one guy walked in and went, I saw the tweet. I want that sandwich. Typically people walk in and go, I hear your pastrami's pretty good. They saw it on Twitter. They don't announce that to the world, right? But if your staff, if your sales team are creating relationships with those people, they can pull that out of them if they want to. And if they're trained to do it, and then convey it back if the management team is ready for it, and they have a way of recording it and thinking about it. So if the team is thinking of a two-way conversation, you glean that information. If the team is spitting out advertising and then just make my sale and I go home, the data stops.
Yeah.
And so in this conversation, if we can get our decision makers and our thought leaders to get in a two-way conversation, they can work that down with our sales path to every action is an interaction or creating a business relationship.
Thank you.
Any other questions before I turn the floor back over to Lance?
Well, I guess the easy ask is if they want more information from you, they've easily got it, right?
Yes.
And from one of the things that you dispelled for me is that marketing doesn't necessarily have to be the tip of the spear, if you will, the traditional, the digital, or the whatever, but if referrals is the basis of that, then have something that people can go back to. One of the things that I've always heard is in your marketing, in your communications with the public, be genuine, be who you are.
Yes.
One of the other things that I've also heard is, Lawrence, you probably shouldn't do that all the time.
Well, so it goes back to your best, most likely to execute client, right? How you do business, personal quirks, style, all of that goes into identifying who that client is and who you are, because it's going to be one of your strengths and weaknesses. One of your strengths is brutal honesty. Well, guess what? One of your weaknesses is going to be rubs people the wrong way. It's fun. If that's truly, and the business is based off of your interaction and things of that nature, then you have to plan for it in your strategy and your positioning. And you don't want to attract people who are delicate flowers, because their expectation of a guy who's going to act in a certain way and be uptight and be, maybe you're not going to meet the expectation. And that business relationship, because again, we're not making a sale, we're creating a relationship. That business relationship's never going to gel. So why attract them in the first place? If you're guaranteed, the Golden Group, we disrupt, we break things. Not business as usual. These are terms we use. We challenge everything, we break things. This is not business as usual. This is not your daddy's ad agency. That's how we put ourselves out there. We literally have a campaign that we don't give a crap about beauty pageants. Because ad agencies create beautiful things. They don't know if they sell or not. We're focused on driving numbers. We intentionally piss people off with our marketing. Because I don't want someone coming to me that just wants a pretty thing and doesn't want to do the work of creating marketing plans. They'll never be happy with me. I won't meet their expectations. I might maybe a buck or two, but it's not a relationship. I want people who understand the difference and who are willing to come in and sit down and go, what am I doing right? What am I doing wrong? And accept the business conversation. So it's not about attracting someone who might spend some money with you. It's attracting that person who wants to do business the way you offer it, the way they're looking for it. And the people that don't, and that's where people fail. They go, well, let's bring them in anyways. Not meeting expectations is the biggest failure in a business. People walk away from you did your best effort to provide them the service at a level. And they still walked away with, I don't know, there's something about it I didn't like. If we could stop that in the path before the sales team ever gets a hold of them, if people coming in looking for A never show up to our place where we offer B, the process and the conversion and the keeping, remember we said last time, a captured client, a return client, is much more effective and efficient and profitable for you than a new client. The best case scenario for you in the world is every single client of yours is a repeat. Now eventually you have to replace them with new clients because people die. They die, they go away, their businesses go out, right, etc. Like bankruptcy, etc. You don't want to lose clients to you sucked and so they went away. But you do want to lose clients to essentially they don't need your services or their business aged out or whatever it is, so you have to replace them with new clients. But the best case scenario for you in the world is 90% returns and 10% new clients. Because the cost effectiveness of repeat business, 2, 3, sometimes 10 or 20% higher, 10, 20 times higher, not just 20%. I mean, it could be 100, 200 times more effective for repeat business that you don't have to go through all the minutia and the dance and the conversation and building a relationship. You just interact the way you both want to interact. That's the most efficient, effective way you can do business. So attracting people most likely to get into that category and fall into this relationship with you is the highest, most effective way your marketing and advertising can work for you. There are people who will come through, pass through one time, etc. It's fine, make your money, do honest business. But for every dollar you're spending to actively draw someone in the front door, draw the perfect client. Perfect. Because again, I'm sure you don't want 5,000 clients, do you?
No.
No, I sure the heck don't. I don't need 5,000 clients. I need 5 clients who are get it and want everything we do. That's so. But if I own a restaurant, I want 5,000 clients. If I own a gas station, I want 50,000 clients. And they're gonna make a different margin. So, who you are and what you do, attract a client that understands and is attracted to what you do, and it's also how they want to do business. If you get that focused, you'll win, and then there'll be repeat. You try to advertise to everyone, everyone's my client, you're gonna miss all these expectations all over the place. Never repeat, then you gotta keep dragging in new people, it's ineffective. It's a long play.